rolling out with the break of dawn. Canvas skies and the show goes on. Iron stakes and the hammer sound. Building dreams on this muddy ground. With sawdust running through our veins, we do it for the faces in the crowd. Step right up with R&B, 'cause this ain't just a show, it's circus history.
Howdy, everyone, and welcome to Off the Rail Podcast, your podcast for everything circus. We're your Off the Rail ringmasters. I'm R. This is B. How you doing, B?
Hey, how's it going today?
Great. Today, our guest is Megan O'Malley. Did I say that right?
You sure did.
How you doing? She was a trumpet player. She was a trumpet player with the circus, and you are now traveling with. Who are you traveling with? You're doing Beauty and the Beast,
Yeah, I play the trombone.
or trombone. I'm sorry, I got it
No
wrong.
problem. It happens all the time, all the time. So yeah, I play the trombone, and I'm with Beauty and the Beast. Yes, the 30th anniversary North American tour.
All right. I guess our first real question would be, what got you to run away with the circus?
Desperation,
Yeah.
which I feel like a lot of people could probably say. I went to school for music, for the trombone and for performance. And so I had graduated from school and had found work in New Jersey first, working music retail and at some local symphonies there. And then I traveled to California for work, just because I had really nowhere else to go and my sister lived out there. I didn't actually have work lined up out there. So couldn't really find good work out there, and then took an audition for Busch Gardens in Williamsburg back in Virginia, got that audition, drove all the way back across the country, and started working there. So this is all to say that I was working at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and I was also working 3 other jobs. I was working an office job with like some kind of administrative function. I was working at With Will Candy over in Colonial Williamsburg in the mornings, and then at night I was working at Blockbuster Video, if any of your ancient viewers
Oh,
remember
wow.
that. Yeah, so at nighttime I would show up like their late shift, like 7 until like midnight or 1 or something, and it was just mostly restocking for them. So I had 4 jobs. I had a color-coded calendar, and it sucked. I was burning the candle at both ends.
Boy.
It was no good. So I just kind of one day at my administrative job, my boss was out for something or other. I had the day kind of to myself. I had done all my work, and I was like, let me just look for other jobs. And I was like, who has a band? And I was like, what about the circus? I know they travel around. So I went to their site, and there was footage of the band. There was media, there were pictures. And so I knew they had one, but there was nowhere to call and like submit your application. So I found the only number I could find was the Disney on Ice number, because this was Feld Entertainment. And so Disney on Ice, Harlem Globetrotters, Monster Jam, all that. So I called Disney on Ice, and it must have been my lucky day because I got Dave Killinger, who was the music supervisor, or he was in charge of the music department at the time. So he told me to send in my stuff, which I did. It got promptly ignored for months, which is fine, typical. And then Brett Barlow, who was the bandmaster on the Red unit, called me a few months later to say, hey, we're in DC. We need a trombonist. It's an emergency. Would you like to come out? And I said yes. And I quit all 4 of my jobs the very next day and loaded up my car and found the circus train. And so that is what drove me to join the circus. Long answer to a short question. Desperation. And it seemed exciting and like a really great opportunity. And for musicians, it was a union, American Federation of Musicians gig, which you should always take if you get the opportunity, because the pay is good and you are protected under your contract. So
Oh, nice.
that's that story.
So I have the great opportunity to know you, so I've heard this story. But can you share with our audience your first day arriving at the train?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. First day
Oh,
riding the train?
first day arriving at the train,
Oh,
arriving to.
sorry. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So after that, like I said, I loaded up my car in Virginia and drove out pretty much directly to the circus train because they wanted me there quickly, like within the week. I think it was within 4 days. And it was in, gosh, where was it? Anacostia, maybe? I forget, but we were in some yard and I pulled up to like a little ridge and you could see into the train yard and you could see the circus train, big and silver with the red, ribbon logo on the side. And I just like sat there in my car and just kind of gaped at it and was like, this is real. This is really happening. Like it was wild to me. I've never been to a circus up to that point. I had never seen the circus train. Um, so, and part of me was like, is this a real job? Like, is this, I thought someone might be pulling my leg. But yeah, I found my way into the yard and pulled up to the train, and a lot of people were walking around. I think it might have been like a day off or between shows or something. And I just kind of stopped in the middle of the yard and got out, and people were like staring at me, because some rando just townie just like pulled in. Um, and Brett Barlow came up to me and was like, "Hey, you must be Megan." I'm like, "Hey, nice to meet you," and everything. And he just kind of grabbed my hand and opened it and plopped my keys to my room in my hand and said, "Here's your keys. This is your home now. Come and go as you please." And I was like, "Okay." It was awesome. Um,
Very nice.
so
What did you
yeah.
think of your train room when you first saw it?
Uh, a mix of feelings. Musicians were lucky because in our contract we got a stateroom, again, a union gig,
Oh,
so we had protections such as a minimum amount of space required, as opposed to the coffin rooms, which I'm sure others of your guests have talked about,
sure.
which were
Yep.
very small. I forget the exact dimensions. It was like 5 by 7 or something ungodly like that. Um, so our rooms were slightly bigger than that. Um, I still could not lie down full length on the floor, which is a shame. So I opened the door to my room and looked in that tight little hallway, and I was like, "Ooh." And then Brett was right behind me, and he kind of showed me the gauchos, which are like storage spaces underneath the seats and stuff, and the storage spaces that were lining the whole length of the ceiling, and the closet, and that little cubby above the closet, all that sort of thing. And I kind of looked around, and I'm a minimalist person anyway. I had driven from California to Virginia to take that job. So I was essentially already living with anything that could fit in my car. It's not like I was, coming from a house or an apartment with a lot of stuff. So I had in my car
Yeah.
probably half of it could fit in the room. I don't know. But luckily, I wasn't starting that work that week. I was just kind of auditing. So I looked around and I was like, "Yeek, this is tight." But as I started to unpack, I was like, "I can make it work. I can make it work." So, and I did. I made it work, and it was fine. And yes, it was an adjustment, but it wasn't that big of an adjustment. Especially having a little fridge and a microwave and a lot of counter space and a sink. I was like, "It's pretty sweet, you know." Kind of what more do you need? And a window. So it was pretty good
Oh
and
yeah,
could fit everything I needed.
I had one of the coffin rooms, so but I also had pie
Ugh.
car.
Okay.
What was it like your first, I guess, performance or audition or practice, I guess, with Ringling?
Um, I can't remember if it was that same day. I think it was because I remember feeling very overwhelmed all day, and like I didn't get to eat that entire day once I arrived at the train until like 8 o'clock at night. So I think that same day, after I had packed up as much crap into my train room as I could and left the rest in the car, I took the bus to the arena, and we weren't playing actually Virginia, and they were in DC. Oh, gosh, I guess we weren't in the Anacostia yard. See, it's been too long and now everything's mixed up in my head, but we were playing that arena. I think it was in Baltimore actually. It was kind of a smallish arena, but to me it seemed really big because I had never been in a sporting arena before. So anyway, I went backstage, and the whatever car it was where you did your paperwork, I forget the number of the car. It was like 33 or 34 or something like that. I forget. But anyway, it was parked inside the arena. And so they took me there first to Alfie. And Alfie had me do all my paperwork before I could do anything else. And that was amazing because I found out you got health insurance right away. So that was cool. And then I was given a form to sign off that I was not a member of PETA. And I didn't even know what PETA was. I knew nothing. So I was like, what's PETA? What is this? And Alfie started describing it to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not any of this. So filled out all that and onboarding paperwork, W-9s or whatever it was. And then Brett walked me backstage and he's like, all right, well, before you go out, like, we want you to meet some people and some of your coworkers. And so he's like, just wait here. So he waited there. He had me wait there. And then he like went off somewhere. And so I was just gaping at everything, like, oh my God, what's happening? And just around the corner comes running an elephant by herself toward
Boy.
me. And I was like,
Oh boy.
oh my gosh, what is this? Has an elephant escaped? What's going on? I had no idea. And it was Asia. And so she came kind of jogging around the corner, and Ryan Henning was behind her, just kind of jogging a couple of feet behind her. But she came out alone first. And so she came scooting up to me, very quiet, on quiet little elephant feet. And Ryan came up and was like, hi, you must be Megan. This is Asia. We always like to have new people meet our elephants. So Asia, put her trunk on my chest like so. And Ryan was like, they like it when you breathe into their trunk so they can, get a sense of who you are or whatever. It's how they identify you, by smell. So she smelled my breath. She smelled my knees and other parts that like elephants like. She snuffled my head and messed my hair up really bad. So that was cool because right after that I had my ID badge photo taken. So I got my
Oh
ID
boy.
badge taken looking
That's
absolutely
awesome.
flabbergasted in the face.
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah, so I just looked like I had been hit by a truck and just my hair was like wild because Asia had snuffled it. So, and that was my ID badge for like 3 years out of the 5.
Oh
But
wow.
it made it special too. I was like, oh, I
Oh yeah,
remember
most
that.
definitely.
Asia came and mucked me up the very first day. Yeah,
Wow.
so that was my first experience. And then after that, the show was starting, and so I sat on the bandstand. And at this point, I was like shaking because I was so hungry. But I had
Oh
a copy
yeah.
of the book, and I was watching the other gentleman play trombone. He was a sub for whoever was normally there, and so he was subbing, and I was kind of trying to follow, but so much was happening that I could not keep track of this music. So I was just gaping at everything. That's what I did. I was just like, oh, whoa, everything that came out. I was staring, the tigers came out near the bandstand and I was gaping at that, and the acrobats were amazing. Everything was amazing and blew my mind. And then I was supposed to go home that night and go to sleep. Like, hey, here's your new life. Okay, go to sleep now. And then tomorrow
Yeah,
you
right.
can, yeah. And then they were like, okay, well, tomorrow you can drive and like, drop off whatever leftover stuff didn't fit in your room. So I was there for just that one onboarding day. And then I had like 2 or 3 days, I think, to like go home, put away all my crap, ditch my car, and come back and then actually start auditing. So yeah, it was a very whirlwind and overwhelming day, and I do not think I slept at all. I think I laid in my bunk and just stared at the ceiling and just was like, where am I? What's going on? So yeah, that will always live rent free in the back of my head.
Oh heck yeah.
Yeah.
So you talk about the auditing. So what was a typical day of that? Doing
A
like your
typical day of
auditing.
auditing, you said?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Um, I mean, I think I only had to do it a couple of times. Brett was a big fan of throwing people into situations without much prep.
Huh.
He thought it
Huh.
was funny. So um, I was given the book, I was given a recording, and I listened to it. I watched the sub, I want to say just one more time, and then I was kind of flung in one of those shows in Baltimore. I'm pretty sure it was Baltimore. I should have looked that up. But anyway, I think he just chucked me in, and it was tough because some of the markings in the book were done by Brett himself, and I didn't know what they meant, and they weren't very clear. And one of those I remember, I'll remember this for life too. We got to the clown walk around it was the Fully Charged show, and there were repeats marked, but Brett had just made parentheses. And a repeat marking is usually, it's kind of a bracket with 2 dots in it. That's not what Brett did. He put parentheses, and I was supposed to magically know what that meant.
Oh, jeez.
So I did not take any repeats. I just blew through it, and I was done, and everybody was still playing, and I was like, "Uh-oh."
Oops.
So yeah, and so at intermission, Brett came over and he's like, "Oh, that clown walk around kind of got away from you, didn't it?" I was like, "Yeah, it did." I was like, "What was I supposed to do there?" He's like, "Oh, you're repeating." I was like, "Put that in the book." So
Right?
after that, I did stay up all night the next night and just listened hardcore to the recording with my book and went through and marked it myself. And then I was like, now I know what's going on. So every day after that, I did, better. Um, and I think Brett was auditing me at that point to make sure I did a good job by his
Right.
standards. So I must have done okay because he left me alone. But I was terrified every day. I was like, "Am I doing okay? Am I going to get fired?" I didn't understand that it was going to be fine. So the first week or so, 2 weeks, were very stressful because I wanted to do a good job. But circus music is like nothing else. It's very intense. It changes every night, and so I was like super tense while I was playing. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm doing a good enough job." Um, but it worked out, and the circus was a patient place. Since it was such a long running gig, you could get away with making some mistakes and learning some things and growing into your job. So I was able to do that.
Right on.
Right on.
Uh,
Yeah.
do
How
you
long?
guys use? Oh, go ahead, bud. Go ahead.
I was gonna say. So, how long were you on the circus for?
I was about 5 years, so I came in partway through fully charged. It was during April of 2012, I want to say, and I was there for all of Build to Amaze and then all of Circus Extreme up until 2017. So the last 5 years of the circus.
Right on.
Yeah, and that
Uh,
was
in re-
about, I think I mathed it out at one point. It was something like 2,500 plus shows for the time
oh,
I was there. I couldn't really count rehearsals, or I didn't really. So it was probably closer to 3,000 or more if you count rehearsals.
holy
But
cow!
yeah.
Now, in regards to the music, have you guys ever written your own, or is it all just pre?
The music was written specifically for the circus. There were pop songs that you could recognize, or like jazz tunes, arrangements of existing tunes. I think one year for a clown gag, it involved a light bulb. That might have been fully charged. They did an arrangement of Firefly. Um,
Oh
I
wow!
forget who the artist was who originally wrote it, but yeah, that was all arranged by Dave Killinger and some of the other guys in the music department. Like during winter quarters, they would write the music for us, and then we would have, we would learn the new show and go down to Florida, Tampa, or wherever the heck we were, Palmetto, at any given year, and they would stuff us into a trailer with the book. We would learn the new music that they had written just for us, and then eventually we would get to play that music with the acts, and we would have to chop our music all to pieces depending on what they did. So that's when we would write in all of the plan A, plan B stuff. So when, for example, a juggling act, someone's juggling, they're doing their act, we're playing along with them, they're supposed to do a trick, we play the music for the trick, and let's say they drop a pin. Oh no, now what happens? So then we go into a vamp, because while we're vamping, and that just means a vamp is when you play a certain section of music over and over. It's something that can be played repetitively without the audience really noticing. So kind of like a little, waiting room, gaming waiting room background music kind of nonsense. So we would play that while the juggler had to decide, is he going to try that trick again and be successful? Does he want to move on? What does he want to do? So let's say he tries the trick again, we would back up and go back to where we started playing the music for his trick, play it again. Let's say it was successful, then we'd move on. If he decided to go on without retrying the trick, then we would have a jump point where we would jump to like, okay, he's not retrying the trick, pick it up over here, get out of the vamp. And so Brett would cue all of these jumps. And those existed for pretty much almost every act, just because you never knew how long stuff was going to take in the music. So if somebody's 40 feet off the ground, today they're feeling good, they got a good night's sleep, they didn't have any problems in the train yard last night, and so they do their trick up on 40 feet off the ground in like 5 seconds. But tomorrow, maybe, they were out partying last night, they're a little tired, they want to make sure they don't fall and die. So they take, a minute and a half to do their trick. So you need to be able to vamp and like have those jump points depending on what the acts want to do on any given day. And of course, especially true for the animals, because animals have no sense of timing per se. And they do things when they feel like doing them and no other time. So our music had to reflect that and had to be flexible for that. So that was a huge thing to learn when they threw us in those trailers to learn our music and stuff. But I think after the first year and a half or 2 years, maybe I was starting to get it.
Takes time. Was there a specific act that you just loved performing for?
There
Uh-oh.
were lots. What? What's uh-oh?
That's a loaded question. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. It's not that loaded. Opening was always really exciting. I really loved the KCT act. They always had the best music. I don't know why. Maybe because they were cool and they always wrote cool music for KCT. But they were incredible. Their music is still some of my favorite. There were some really beautiful aerial numbers that I really liked, especially in Fully Charged. I really liked that aerial music. Built to Amaze, I remember that show was like super long. It was longer than the other two, and it was very intense. And with that music, it ramped up and up and up in the finale music, like when all the acts came running back out and were like doing jumping jacks around each other, and the elephants were doing one more circle, and it was just an explosion of sound and color and everything. And our music kept modulating up and up and up. And that's like when we're the most tired. We've just played like a 2.5 hour show. And it's like, we are built to amaze, we are built to amaze, we are built to amaze. Like it just kept going up and up. And I remember the trumpet player, Slick, and I would just look at each other for the final modulation where we would jump up super high and we would look at each other like, oh, here we go, and try to hit it. But it was really cool because it built up such excitement and got the audience really like foamed up and like revved up. So those moments were super cool. So I really love those. So I would say like KCT, the pretty aerial acts, and then those big openers and big closers were my most fun to play. Everything else was great too. But yeah, those were highlights for me.
Yes. Going back a little bit because I am curious when you mentioned clowns real quick. That brings me to pieing. Have you ever been pied for your birthday, or have you ever pied anybody?
Yeah, I didn't pie anybody because I wasn't a clown. I believe that was a thing that clowns exclusively got to do. I could be wrong about that. But I never saw anyone who wasn't a clown pieing someone else. Um, so yeah, I for the first year I did not get pied, and I think it was because we were on a train run and I was hiding. Um, so that happened. I think I was on a train run twice for my birthday, and I hid both. Like I locked the door of my room, and I could hear the clowns shuffling around outside. I was like, "Ooh, you're not gonna get me." And I would sneak out to Pie Car, to get my steak and eggs and run back or whatever. But I did get pied. Um, the first time I got pied, it was a little awkward because I was still newish. Like I had only been on the circus for a year, and I remember it took a long time for people to warm up to new people on the circus because you never knew how long someone could handle the gig
Sure.
and how long they would be staying. So for the first 3 months I was there, like no one even talked to me. No one even gave me time of day. And then for the second 3 months, like I got past that 4 month mark where it's like, okay, she's not going to have a nervous breakdown from being here. So let's at least get to know each other's names. Um, and then so a year later, it must have been my birthday, and I got pied by the clown's name was Brian, and it was his like first week, so he was super nervous pieing me. So he just kind of gently went, yeah, like pied me. And I saw it coming, like, because Oscar, I think, was coaching him what to do. So they were very obvious. It wasn't very sneaky. And I just kind of let it happen because I'm like, oh, he's in training. I should help train this guy how to pie somebody. So I just like was like, okay, I'll get pied, whatever. And the other times they had to hunt me down a little bit. So one time I got caught at Pie Car Junior. I was in line and I like turned around to say something to someone and they had backed off. And here was like Oscar or somebody had just like pied me right in the nose. And I've got a picture of that on my socials somewhere as well. It comes around every year to remind me. So I've been pied, I think, 3 times.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Were you in the room when
Anything, B?
Oscar hid
One
in the
time-
room?
Hang on.
Hid in the room?
Oscar told us
Oscar-
a story
Oscar
about
had a
him
story where he
hiding
hid-
in the band room.
Like I vaguely remember that. Was that for me or for somebody else? I don't remember, but I'm sure it happened. There's no question it happened, but
You were about to say something?
oh, before that, I was just going to say there was one year that I remember like there was no shaving cream available, or maybe I was on a train run, and their solution to pieing me that year was to draw a pie on a piece of paper and smack me in the face with it.
Oh, geez.
So I still got pied, and I have
That-
I have it somewhere in my storage, a piece of paper. It's got like a circle, and it has the word pie on the bottom that they hit me in
That
the
is
face with.
funny.
Yeah, but I don't really remember Oscar hiding in the room for me per se, but
No, it
he
was
might
for
have hidden under a table.
was for
or
another
something.
band
They were
member.
sneaky, man. They were okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Sometimes they had to get real creative.
There, in regards of your trombone,
Mhm.
is there a specific brand or type of trombone that you like to play, or does it matter? Or I don't know anything about that stuff. So.
When I first showed up to the circus, I had been mostly doing classical and orchestral stuff, and so I had a Bach 42, which is a large trombone with a trigger mechanism and some extra tubing. Those are used in an orchestral setting. They have a really big, broad sound. It was not at all appropriate for the circus, but I didn't know that. Luckily, Brett was a trombone player in addition to being a trumpet player. So he had his own trombones with him, and he's like, just play mine. He's like, you're not going to want to play that. And after the first day, I was like, yeah, I don't want to play this. It was too much. I needed a smaller, brighter instrument to cut through in those arenas and to match the trumpet and saxophone better. So I switched over to Brett's trombone, which was actually a really rare model. It was a Minnick. Larry Minnick was kind of a craftsperson, but his main focus was modifying trombones. He also did make a few horns of his own, but very few. So the horn that Brett had was very rare. And I grew to really like it. And so when I was looking for my own horn then to be an appropriate horn for the circus, the other horn that I looked at, I looked for a Minnick and I found one and it was okay. But again, Minnick was not into making horns, he was into modifying horns. So the next one I looked for was a Williams. And so Williams trombones were made by Earl Williams. He was a master craftsman. And so he handmade his trombones. And I was lucky to be able to find one on I forget where it was, Brass Arc probably, which is a well-known brass site. It's a vintage trombone made in like the 1950s. And they're just so special. They have a really dark sound, but they can get very, very loud. They have like a broader bell throat. So I really loved it and I stuck with it. And I played that trombone not only on the circus, but on subsequent gigs and tours after that, on cruise ships, amusement parks, on tour.
Oh, wow.
So it was my favorite, and actually such a favorite that I ended up getting a second one because they're so rare that I was afraid if anything happened to mine, I would be devastated. So I'm like, let me at least have a backup, you know? So I did
There you
find
go.
another one in worse condition, but I can use it for parts. It doesn't matter. But yeah, luckily also trombones are one of the cheaper instruments too. So these, they're very
Oh.
rare and special, but we're talking like around $3,000, which is cheap for a musical instrument.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, they were. I discovered those instruments through the circus, and luckily, I'm very glad that Brett was there to share his knowledge of the history of trombones with me and like what sounds good, so that I was able to find these instruments and be like, yeah, these really are a good fit for me personally as well. So yeah, it worked out.
So, was there a big difference in playing on cruise ships than in the circus?
Massively. I mean, the circus is different than any other gig. And that includes army bands, which are also known for being pretty intense. Um, but the circus is something else. The sheer amount of music that you play on the circus is like nowhere else. There's no other ensemble that is playing for 2.5 hours almost straight. Like there, I didn't have whole numbers off where I was just standing there having measures of rest. If you're on a cruise ship, you play like a 20-minute set and you're done, you know. You might play two 20-minute sets with a 15-minute break in between or something like that. And then you've got like 3 hours until the next thing you've got to do. And then that's only 20 minutes. You know, that's nothing compared to like playing for 2 hours straight and then having like a 9 pack on a weekend where you're doing 9 shows in a weekend with a Monday hangover one show.
Ooh.
On the circus, I could do up to 23 hours of playing in a week, just shows, not counting rehearsal. That's insane for a brass player. There are not many brass musicians who do that ever. And so when we had subs come in, you could tell that they were horrified and were struggling, especially if they had to sub on a weekend. It was tough.
Oh
So,
yeah.
cruise ships, yeah, were completely different scene. I mean, I was in a house band on a cruise ship and it was jazz. It's jazz arrangements, loungy stuff, improvising, very chill. Like I could stand there and be bopping along for measures at a time while someone else has a solo. I have my own little solo, you know, jazz music. So it was totally different than the circus. And it was, you know, on a ship, I'm not playing in a huge sporting arena with 13,000 people there. It's like people are at the bar, you know, cocktail hour. So totally different, yeah.
Did you did you have like was it the rooms kind of the same in a ship or?
The rooms were worse on the ship. Um, the ship was not a union gig for musicians. And so we were, if you were in the house band, you were below decks, you had no window, you shared a room. On the circus, I had my own room, I had a window, I had a fridge, I had a microwave. On the ship, I was bunked with another person who I know this is a family show, so if you have to edit this out, go ahead. This person liked to vape in the room, and they were on the bottom bunk. So
Mhm.
that was very unfortunate for me.
So it just went right up, yeah.
Yep, it went straight up, and she would do it at nighttime as well, which really sucked for me. So I did not appreciate
Oh
that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it wasn't as good. I didn't like it. Also, the cruise ships are not owned by American companies. So, in addition to those inconveniences and having a very small room, you also had kind of a suspension of your American work rights.
Oh,
And sometimes they wouldn't even let you get off the ship in your own United States port, which for me was a
what?
massive problem. I had a huge problem with not being allowed into my home country.
Oh yeah, that's
So
messed up.
probably the third time that happened was the time that I said, I'm never doing this again. I'm done.
Yeah, I don't
Wow.
blame you.
So
Wow.
yeah, they hold your passports in the cruise management office, and this is common practice on all the ships. They're owned by like some company out of the Bahamas, usually, or whatever, Barbados, who knows. Um, and like I wasn't treated badly or anything, but it was just like it was such a controlling environment. Like there were inspections constantly. You couldn't bring any fresh produce into your room. There was so much stuff you couldn't do. You couldn't have a hot water kettle.
Oh.
There was
Oh
virtually
wow.
no privacy. I'm like bashing cruise ships in this talk right now, but it was just not for me. And plus, I get
Well,
motion sick really
you're not giving
easily.
names, so.
Yeah, I'm
Oh
not.
yeah,
Yeah, the band itself was great. I'm glad I did it. I'm really glad I did it. It wasn't a terrible experience overall, like, especially performance wise, it was wonderful. I met really wonderful people. I learned a lot about myself as a musician and like learning to play new styles and everything. The living situation was very much not for me. So that's really what it boiled down
All
to.
right. Well,
Yeah.
getting back to trains and circus,
Yeah.
what was your favorite train run?
You know, I'm going to just say, first of all, that I regret that I was not there for one of the final runs where you guys went through, it was some national park. And the photos that I saw everyone taking from their vestibules were gorgeous. I forget which park it was. Um, I had left because the circus was about to close, and so I went to a job interview. I had to fly to Kansas City for it. And the train not only passed through my hometown, but it also went through this gorgeous national park. And I feel like that would have been the best train run ever, and I
Oh
completely missed
yeah.
it. And so I regret that for my whole life. That aside, obviously I loved that loop in California. I can't say the name of it, Techigapi, whatever loop. That was really super cool, where the train would go
Oh yeah.
on the mountain and like loop back upon itself, and you could wave to each other.
Yeah.
That was good. There was also a horseshoe bend somewhere. Also, I forget where that was. Um, but it
Oh
was
yeah.
the
Wave
train would
across
be a
the
really.
canyon.
Do you know where that was?
I think that's
I'm
out
trying to
west.
remember, but I know.
I remember there were a lot of trees. It was like a wooded area, and it U bends around a lake. And I have a video of it that
West
probably has the
Virginia?
location. It might have been. Yeah, I feel like it was in my head. It looks like West Virginia, so it could have been. But yeah, that was a beautiful one. There was the one where we went down the like the California coast along the ocean. That was nice. And I mean, I just loved the ones where we were kind of, oh, Salt Lake was really good. That was a cool memory for me. Like, I remember waking up and the lighting in my room was really weird. It was like it had snowed outside, but I knew that was impossible. So, like, I climbed down from my bunk and looked out the window, and it was like we were on a mirror. It was so cool. I just happened to wake up right when we were on Salt Lake. And
Yeah.
that was one of the cooler experiences. Going out into the desert on the way to Vegas, I forget where we were coming from, maybe like Omaha or something. But that was cool because they would turn off the vestibule lights and then you could see the whole Milky Way out in the desert.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's so many, but the other ones that I really like were just the ones where the train was randomly in the woods and you would just come across the craziest old Americana stuff, like run down towns, whole towns run down, random abandoned graveyards and stuff, and just animals that didn't really know any better, just like going right up to the train, like foxes and deer and stuff. And yeah, that was really cool. The places with the fewest people, I guess, those were cool places. But yeah, all those train runs were great. Yeah, and then of course the
Um,
engineer could ruin the whole run for you. There's always
oh,
that.
of course.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Well, especially when
tapping
they're
their
used to
tapping
hauling
their
freight.
brakes like your
Oh yeah.
freight. Yeah.
Yep. How? I'm just going a step back to your those days that you're doing, you multiple show weekends and stuff like that. Uh, the physical demands for that. Do you do cardio or something to get ready for that, or how does? I
I feel like
mean,
getting out of the train yard was like enough cardio. Like half the time you had to walk a mile to get anywhere. This was when Uber was just getting started. So if you wanted to go anywhere, you had to first get out of the yard and to an actual place, like on a
oh yeah.
map. So that was always cardio. And I always walked everywhere to get my groceries too. So that, no, I didn't really do anything. I just had to, when I first started, I really had to pace myself because if you had a six pack, especially when I was first starting, after the second show of a 6 show weekend, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make it through all these other shows that we have to do? Like, I've just played 4.5 hours and now we've got to do that. Like, still got like 8 more hours of playing to do. How am I going to do it? So it was a lot of like learning how to pace yourself with your small muscles. And then when the band was performing, you guys might remember this, we stood for the whole performance. You basically only sat down when you didn't feel good. So I had a little stool next to me, but it wasn't very comfortable, and we stood for the whole time. And playing itself for that amount of time, again, brass musicians and musicians in general do not play for that amount of time that we played on the circus. It's unusual, and it's very unique to the circus, that amount of playing. So that is a workout. And I remember sometimes after the show, we would go get a drink or whatever, and I would have my drink and be like relaxing with everyone. And all of a sudden, like there would be like this like cramping sensation in my tummy because the muscles that I had been using to play, like the abdominal support, would just suddenly like finally release,
Oh,
probably as the drink hit them. And then I would be like, ugh, for a minute. Cause it was just like, I feel like that's why I've got a pretty good figure is probably from the circus, probably from all that
there you
playing.
go.
So that it was a workout just doing that because you were standing in like, like this for an hour at a time. Then you'd have intermission and do it again, and just constant abdominal support. So it was like doing a permanent kind of crunch thing. Yeah. So I'm not very athletic, but I would walk everywhere to get my groceries and stuff. So that was and getting out of the train yard. That was my exercise.
What what is what's the funniest thing that's ever happened during a performance that you
Oh
can
gosh.
recall?
I'm not sure if I can think of the funniest. There were so many funny things. I guess one that
What
comes
about
to mind is we had the yeah, we had the Emmelins with us doing their animal act. They had poodles, they had those little ferrets or whatever. They had that one cockatoo. That was actually pretty funny because we never actually had the cockatoo, if you remember. They were trying to train it to do something. It wouldn't do it, and then one day during
Uh,
rehearsal it flew up to the ceiling in the arena, and that was the end of that. That was the end of ever using the cockatoo. Um, so there was that. And then they had a little donkey, a little adorable black donkey. And I forget his name, but his name in Russian meant luxury car.
ah,
So the donkey named luxury car. He would come out and pull the Emmeline's little wagon with all their supplies on the back or whatever. And then that was kind of his whole thing. That's all he did. He would bring their wagon out and then just stand there politely for the show, for their act. And there was one day that he was standing there, I forget where we were, and I think he got bored or hungry or both. And I was playing my part, and then I had a little rest, so I put my horn down and I saw some movement out of the corner of my eye. And I look over, and here's Luxury Car the donkey, and he is pulling up with his head the gaff tape on the floor that was holding our mats down on the floor. And he was pulling it up like spaghetti and like eating it.
oh man.
And I was like, somebody, your donkey is eating the floor. Help. So it was funny. And I think that was about their act ended like shortly after that, where he like lost his leverage to pull the tape up and kind of dropped it and let it go. But I did wonder, like, how much of that did he eat?
Oh boy.
And I never found out. So that was funny. What else? There was one time that they put the elephant tub a little too close to Brett on Brett's side, and I forget who was over there. It wasn't Asia. It might have been Asan over there, the elephant, or baby maybe. I forget. But anyway, they put the tub a little too close to the bandstand, and the elephant started twirling, and then she lifted her tail while she was turning, and I think y'all know what that means.
hmm
So she was spinning and about to poop
oh,
while spinning,
oh no.
which is normally not a problem. But her tub was right there at the edge of the bandstand. And I think I saw Brett's eyeballs from all the way on the opposite side of the arena. Like, I think I saw his eyes pop out of his skull because he knew what was about to happen. And he just, like, got off the bandstand. and luckily, I don't think it actually got into the bandstand, but it definitely got close. So that was very funny for me. For me, on the
That's
opposite side, having
amazing.
nothing to do with the situation, just observing, I was like, So for me, that was great.
That's
For him,
amazing.
not so much. Yeah, those are the two I
oh,
can think of, but I'm sure there were plenty of others.
what about pranks that the band used to?
Um, a lot of them were kind of dumb. I didn't really take part. That was like a boy thing. Um, we didn't mess with each other's instruments too much. The one thing we did was if anyone left their phones lying around, I've still got videos and pictures from my phone, like when I went to the bathroom or whatever, and I'd come back and like it had made the rounds in the whole band, and like there are pictures of people like with like stuff up their nose like this, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what the heck, you guys? So there was that, or like if someone took a nap in the band room, there would be just massive like spooning happening so that the person would wake up surrounded by a huddle of people. Or like one time our saxophone player fell asleep under a table, and so we piled chairs on top of him. I don't know. Stuff like that. I'm trying to think of other stuff, but I feel like for a family show, a lot of it might not have been appropriate, and I probably blocked all that stuff out anyway. But it was mostly just stuff like that.
Oh,
Luckily,
wow.
because I was the only chick, I wasn't like a victim most of the time. Just the phone thing. But yeah, I think that's about it. Oh yeah, there was the milk jug challenge. There was that, but that was not just the band. That was everybody, and that was you chose your own suffering there. That was your own fault if you
Oh,
suffered
yeah.
from the
Yeah,
milk
that's
jug challenge.
uh,
Yeah, and your guests can Google that if
sure.
they want to
Yeah.
see what that is. Yeah, I'm not going to describe it here.
Yeah, no need.
Nah.
What would you say? So that's kind of a two-part question.
Okay.
What would you say was the most challenging part of the job and the most rewarding part of the job?
Challenging. Initially, I will say that the getting the endurance to be able to do the show was initially extremely challenging. Like I said, to the point where musicians subbing in on the band could not hack it. And that's not a criticism, and that's not to toot my horn. That's just how that gig was. It was so intense playing wise. And even years afterward, I had such incredible endurance, which is not useful in other gigs. So it's not
Mm.
anything. But anyway, so there was that. The other thing was probably the living situation. The train situation was love hate. I think everyone loved the rocking motion of the train and
Oh yeah.
just being able to chill out and really do nothing for a day or two while you were on those beautiful train runs across beautiful parts of the country, and just to have after a show your own little house to go back to where you didn't have to unpack luggage, and you could have decor on your walls and just kind of do your own thing in there, and that was really nice. The downsides were just the power went out so often, especially that one year
Oh
that the
yeah.
generators were just like a mess. That one year, you know what I'm
Hmm.
talking about. The generators were like a quarter million or a half million each. I think they were a quarter million each. So when one broke, it took a while to get it fixed
Oh
and
yeah.
replaced, and poor train crew had to be out there in like -15 temperatures. I just remember watching them like
Oh yeah.
hammering on that thing, trying to get it to keep working for us. And meanwhile, like
The Great Freeze.
you're like freezing, like the temperature's dropping in your room. You got no water because the pipes are freezing and stuff. I
Yep.
remember the one year in Brooklyn, like they I
Oh,
guess
I
we don't work
remember
for
that
Ringling
well.
anymore, but they called OSHA because there was no water on the train and it was freezing, which, good for whoever did that. I know who did it, but we're not saying names.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah,
Well,
just the living situation could be very rough. It could be very camping.
Is that why we
It could
got
take hours to
hotels?
get water. Huh?
Is that why we got the hotels?
In Brooklyn, that
Yeah.
one year?
There's a
Yep.
few days went by, and then
Yep.
all of a sudden we got
yeah.
hotels.
Yep, there was a specific person who had enough and who called OSHA and said, "We have children, we have acrobats out here living on a train. The train has no water. The train has minimal heat. It's not safe. We want you to interfere." So OSHA showed up like they do. I've had to call OSHA before at another job, and they actually do show up pretty in force and
Yeah, they'll
say,
play.
yeah, they don't play. They're like, "Excuse me, we've had a call, and you're going to rectify this now, or we're going to have a problem that's going to, prevent your show from going on tonight." That kind of stuff. So yeah, that is why there were hotels in Brooklyn that one year. I forget what year it was, maybe like 2016 or 15 or something.
2016.
I forget. 16.
Yep.
Okay.
60, yeah.
Yeah, it was really cold. I had the flu that year, and that we were there, and it was miserable. But yeah, sometimes you would have no water for a while, sometimes no electricity. The musicians could protect ourselves. Our union contract allowed us to get hotels. But the problem was, it was like a weird finagly thing where like we had to wait a certain amount of time to request the hotel. And I was the union steward for a while. And so it was so frustrating to be sitting in my room with my coat on because the temperature's dropping. Everyone in the band is like, Megan, why aren't you requesting the hotel? This is ridiculous. And I'm like, we haven't hit the 2 hour mark yet, guys. Like, I know it's getting colder. And the thing was, it could be 20 degrees by the time we hit the 2 hour mark. You know what I mean? So it was always just like a, ugh. But at least we had that contract where we could protect ourselves. A lot of other
Right.
performers
Oh
were
yeah.
not so lucky. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, the living situation was one of the difficult parts. In addition to being one of the most beautiful parts of working and living in the circus. But the best parts, the whole thing was so great to me. I loved it. I loved working for the circus. I had very few complaints, to be honest. I guess the worst parts were, or no, we're on better parts now. So the better parts were the train runs, of course, getting to see the country, the downtime where you got to have fun and do some sightseeing, um, the really great audiences, the times where we were sold out or we had really enthusiastic audiences. I know people hated how early the kiddie shows were, but man, were they enthusiastic. You know, I have videos of that too on my socials of the kids just like screaming and deafening. And it was so great that our show brought so much fun to people. Riding the train and getting like passing through towns, and people would come running out of office buildings, like drop their whole workday and just come rocketing out to wave. And that was really special and cool, you know, to see people so enthusiastic. So
Right on.
those were really great parts of the gig that I really enjoyed.
Sweet. Did you have a favorite venue?
Oh man, I have a lot of least favorite venues. um, There was that one in California. Where was it? It was terrible. Fresno, was it? I'm gonna
Bad, huh?
knock Fresno personally. I think it was Fresno. Where our stuff got stolen every year.
Oh.
Anyway. Um,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't.
but
Yeah, I
okay.
can't think of the places.
All right, I'm gonna knock them specifically, but other than them, most yards were okay and good, whatever. Even Anacostia, yeah, I know it was bad sometimes. It wasn't that bad. Um, that one in, I think it was Lexington or Louisville, where we were, it was an RJ Corman yard, and we were right behind the arena, so you could just get off the train and go
Oh,
to work, like right there.
yeah, it was literally right there. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
Kentucky. Yeah.
it was either Louisville or Lexington, and I forget. I think it was Louisville. But yeah, the yard was RJ Corman, because I also remember the yard was clean and very well kept,
Oh yeah.
and they had those display trains, um, and it was like a privately owned yard, and it was so cool. So that was a favorite. When we were in Boston, that was a really good yard because we were right on MIT campus, and you could just step out and like be on a street, college campus street with like all these great restaurants and stuff, and like right downtown. Um, Colorado Springs, I know, was always a favorite just because we were right there in that gorgeous little park right there.
Yes,
You could go see Garden of the Gods.
I have
Um,
photos of actually you and I cactus hunting, looking at
oh
cactuses
yeah,
in that little near that little gnome home.
Cactus hunting.
yeah, yeah. No, I totally remember that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and there were like
I've never
cactus
heard of
fruits
cactus
out there
hunting.
or something, and like we would go out and harvest them. But
Yep.
yeah, those yards were nice. Anything that was close to stuff, like that one in Bell, West Virginia. We were playing Charleston, West Virginia, but the train would park in Bell, and I remember it so clearly just because that was also before the jump to Mexico, and we were basically in a Walmart parking lot, and I always felt
Oh,
bad for
that
that.
yes, we were right next to
We were
Walmart.
right
Yeah.
there. And so we would park there, and I always felt bad for that Walmart staff because we would like zombies come off the train and like infiltrate this Walmart, like a horde of us. So yeah, and they would come out and scream at us for taking their carts. So yeah, There's some family fun for you.
Yeah, because certain people wouldn't return the carts. That's why they would just
Yeah,
leave them in
that's
the yard.
why. But yeah, that's where we would stock up for the run to Mexico because that was like our last good grocery stop before Mexico. And I remember just packing it in to the gauchos. Um, so yeah, all of those kinds of things. There was another one where we were like behind at like a strip mall kind of situation. And I remember we had to like crawl through a hole in the fence to get to the outlet malls. And I just always thought it was so hilarious to see like the acrobats and their kids like, crossing live tracks, like surreptitiously looking around to see no one was watching and like crawling through the fence like hobos or like, refugees. So that was always funny. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other yards, but those are the ones that stick out. The ones where we were close to stuff to do or scenery or grocery stores. Yeah, those were the best yards.
Very nice. So you went to Mexico with the circus?
Yeah, I think, yep, I think twice.
What was that train run like?
Wild. Totally wild. Um, it was a very long run. It was like 4 days or something. And we did, I want to say, 2 weeks in Mexico City and 3 in Monterey, or vice versa. I forget. But I think Monterey was the longer sit. The first time we went was a catastrophe because we got to the border and they were supposed to have arranged for, I don't know what happened, but something with our food supply fell through. So
Oh
we were
yeah.
supposed to either get resupplied with food or we were supposed to be allowed to take our food in. Customs came through the train and demanded everyone throw everything out. We had a Chinese troop at the time, and those poor people had to throw out everything. They were devastated. Devastated. There was much weeping and gnashing of teeth. Um, I don't think that I had to throw out much of my own stuff because I mostly had brought canned stuff, and they didn't inspect my room very carefully. The nice thing about the band car was it was halfway down, so by the time customs came to you, they were like exhausted. They were like over it. They were like, okay, whatever. So, but the Chinese troop got ripped off. They had to throw out all their produce because they lived on a car together, and they had one kitchen, and they would prepare family style as is their custom. But worst of all was they did the same thing to Pie Car. They went into Pie Car and threw everything out. And we're in the middle of the desert. It's super hot. And I remember we were at customs like way past the time we were supposed to be there. We were supposed to leave same day and we didn't leave until like the next morning or the middle of the night or something. But after customs left, we like everybody went dumpster diving to like rescue as much food as they could. But of course it had been sitting in a dumpster in the heat, so you could only rescue so much. So I remember for the rest of that run down to Mexico, which was 4 days by the way, probably 3 after that, all we had in Pie Car was prepackaged those Otis Meyer muffins,
Mm-hmm.
bologna, and like toast. And like, prepackaged like candy bars and stuff. That was it.
Right.
That was all
Yeah.
we had. There was nothing. They had thrown everything else out. So for 3 days, that was all there was to eat. So that was a disaster. That was ridiculous. And
No
I was
steak and
grateful for
eggs.
my canned food. No, there was nothing. Like literally.
Mm.
Um, I think he could make you a grilled cheese. I think they had rescued some,
Yeah.
processed cheese product or what, like Velveeta garbage. But there was nothing for that run. And I blogged extensively about it, so maybe there was some other stuff, but it was very minimal. They had taken, like, you couldn't have raw meat. Yeah, they took everything. Um, so yeah, that was a long train run. One of the things I remember about it was passing through cities and towns, and like people would come out and mob the train and like climb telephone poles so they could look in our windows on that first run down. And we did also have security that followed the train like in the desert. So you could look out
Yeah.
your window at nighttime and see, I don't know what the security company was, but it was like yellow Jeeps with a black Falcon on them. Um, and that was the logo of the security company. And they would be off roading in the desert alongside the train, which was really cool
Yep.
to see.
Yeah, that was neat.
Yeah, so that was a wild run. And the second time we went down to Mexico, we learned our lesson. So everybody hid food all over the train. I hid so much food. I hid food in the ceiling. I hid it in all the gauchos, like fresh food, produce, everything that we weren't
Oh
allowed
yeah.
to have. I was like, you know.
See, I had access to empty rooms, so I would hide stuff in
Nice.
empty rooms.
Sweet. Yeah, I remember Rebecca Wardrobe and we were on the same car, and we just, we high fived about it. We were like, we're doing this. And when they came through, when we heard them coming, I took the stuff all out of my fridge and freezer and just shoved it wherever. And then they came through and inspected my room, and they were like, "You're all good." I was like, "Sweet." And I waited until they left the car, put everything back, and then Rebecca and I came out and did a happy dance in the hallway. We were like, "Yes." So the second train run, we did not make that same mistake, but also the second train run, they did supply pie car. They worked it out. So I remember the food truck showing up and like supplying pie car. So we were good for that second run.
Well, I remember they they were confused at why I didn't have a refrigerator in my room. When I was first put in the room, it was broke, and they didn't have a new one for me, so I just pulled the
Uh,
broken one out and got rid of it. And I just left that space, and I used that space as like laundry. So when
oh,
they came in to inspect my room, the guy was confused. He's like, "Are you hiding something there?" I'm like, "If you
it
want to
made
go
it
through my
worse for
dirty
me and
laundry, bro,
suspicious.
like you go right ahead." He's like, "Why don't you have a fridge?" I said, "Because I choose not to have one at the moment." He was totally confused. But
That's what pie car's
Oh
for.
my gosh.
yeah, there
Yep.
you go. But
Oh my gosh.
we are getting to that moment in the show. We're running out of time. So before we go, I would say this. Do you have any advice that would you give any up and comers who want to play music, instruments, and do shows?
Um, wow. I wish I had thought of this ahead of time a little bit. Advice. Non-circus advice really, because there are some circuses out there with bands, but they're very minimal. Um, I think I think for any person who wants to be a musician and who thinks that the circus or the stuff that you've heard about that I've gotten to do is exciting or interesting. In addition to the circus, and since then I've gotten to do cruise ships, touring shows, theme parks like Disney and Universal. So it's been a wild ride, and I guess my advice would be there is so much more than just what you learn about in school. You probably learn about your orchestra stuff, your jazz band stuff, maybe music production and DJing and stuff. There are so many opportunities, and so I would just say to like stay open minded, and if you are offered an opportunity that sounds a little scary, like running away to join the circus, or hey, we want you to play on this cruise ship, and you think to yourself, like I thought to myself, oh, I'm not a jazz musician. I don't know if I can hack it. I get motion sick really easily. I don't know if I can hack it. But you don't know until you try. So I would say like take the opportunity. And the worst thing that'll happen is like after a couple of days or a month or whatever, you'll find out like, I can't hack it. And then you'll have to go to your boss and say, we should find someone else. But at least you tried, at least you know? And that's the worst case scenario, and that's probably not going to happen. What probably is going to happen is you're going to learn a whole lot of new, awesome stuff. You're going to learn a whole lot about yourself. You're going to meet a lot of really cool people and network in such a way that you can get more opportunities in the future. So I would say, whatever type of musician you are, whether you play or produce or do music therapy or you teach or whatever, like if an opportunity comes up that seems kind of outside your wheelhouse, like consider it anyway, take it anyway if it's being offered to you and if you can really do it. Because it would be better to do it than to have regrets. Like if I had not
Hold on.
quit all my 4 jobs and done the circus, I could have missed out on 5 years of the best years of my life of
Oh,
of
for
an
real.
adventure that I got to have that's now gone, that I can never say, well, I could always try to do it later. No, it's gone now. And I got to do it, and that's like a treasure that I get to hold in my heart. So I would say for musicians out there, do the thing. There's no waiting until you're ready. There's no comfort zone. Just do the thing, and if it doesn't work out, fine. You can go back to your life and try again something else. But take the chance, try, have an adventure. That's it.
Right on. You heard it here,
And I went
folks.
past time, I'm sure.
No, you're good. No, but there's one
Yeah,
more
just
thing
edit
before
it
we go.
down.
Where can they get tickets to go see your current show? where you're at now?
Oh, you can go to, I forget the website, but if you Google Beauty and the Beast musical, um, I wish I had my computer on in front of me right
We'll have a
now.
link down
Maybe I
below.
can get in there. Okay, yeah, but you can go to Disney's page or like Beauty and the Beast, the musical. It'll take you right to the page right away. And yeah, you can buy tickets there. They range from like I think $55 up to like 150 or 200, depending on how fancy you want to get. Sorry, I don't get comp tickets, you guys. But you can always come down to the pit and say hi, or if you know I'm passing through your town or city, you guys can feel free to link my socials or whatever you want to link. And people can come say hi, or you want to grab coffee before a show, I'm down for that. And if there are, sometimes they have ticket lotteries and stuff. I always advertise for those things on my socials. So yeah, come say hi, come see a great show. It's so awesome. I mean, it's Beauty and the Beast, right? It's a great show. It's a classic.
Heck yeah.
So I am loving playing it, and the audiences have been spectacular. So, really great show. Come see it.
Right on. Well, right here, folks. I want to thank our listeners and watchers, and definitely want to thank Megan for coming on the show. We loved having you.
Oh,
And with that said, until next time, folks, we will see you down the road.
see you down the road.